Hello, everybody. I am here with Margie Stahl, SEO supervisor at Publicis Sapient. And like a few of my other guests, Margie and I have worked together quite a bit. I was previously at, it wasn't Publicis Sapient at the time when I left, it was Sapient Razorfish. Before that, it was Razorfish. Before that, it was Rosetta. So we worked together for quite a long time, worked together on several accounts. I feel like know each other pretty well. Nonetheless, Margie, happy to have you on the podcast. And how are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm happy to be here. I feel
Cool.
like it's such an honor.
Right. Just trying to get a podcast up and running. It's a lot of work, and really grateful for anybody at this point that's willing to come on, especially right now, early on, when like I would say that the views are small right now. Someday maybe it'll grow. It's kind of a labor of love for me, but the views are small. So I definitely appreciate people like yourself signing on at 9 p.m. Eastern for more work talk, more shop talk.
Yeah, this is fun work talk. I enjoy talking to you. And podcasts are the way of the future. I mean, they get, there's a lot out there, but it's all good stuff. I mean, I love listening to podcasts.
I've enjoyed it so far, and the barrier to entry has been pretty easy, right? It's have a good microphone, make sure you've got the right tooling and the right outlets set up correctly, and maybe someday I'll write a blog post on it, because there are some complexities. I'm simplifying it, but the barrier to entry for anybody in this day and age is almost none. So even folks like myself, SEO nobodies, can start a podcast. Anyways, so want to get into our first segment, the life mob theme. Many mobsters call being in the mob the life. I find that funny because I have a bit of I don't want to call it a fetish, but I love mob movies. If you can see right behind me, I've got Goodfellas, Godfather, Casino, Godfather Part 2. That's my wall art, right?
Which one's your favorite? I've never seen any, so you
really?
can yell at me. I know you're not the first person to do that.
The Godfather, I would say, is the most classic one. Probably not the most realistic one, but definitely the most classic one. So that one probably holds the most special place in my heart as it relates to mob movies. But anyways, let's talk about you. So your background, take us back to the beginning. How did you get into SEO? Where did you start?
Okay. Well, do we want the long version or the short version?
You got time.
I'll give a middle ground. So I went to the Ohio State University. Go Bucks.
Woo!
When I was a kid, I was super into watching the news. We didn't have cable. So yeah, I watched like shows. I watched things I probably shouldn't have been watching, but my parents were watching it and they just didn't really care. So I didn't really have Nickelodeon or anything like that. So I was super fascinated with like Katie Couric and Oprah and like Leslie Stahl. So I knew, all right, I'm going to be a journalism major. Like I'm good at writing. I was always good at writing. So those two things fit. That just seemed like the ideal path. And going off the crime theme, I actually really thought I would be like a crime reporter. I was really into the investigative journalism piece. So I started Ohio State, thinking I was going to be this hotshot investigative journalist. I dabbled in a little bit of broadcasts in those classes and things like that. That did not pan out. I did a criminology minor because of this, and those were honestly some of the best classes I took at Ohio State. Like as a side note, like sociology of gangs opened my eyes to many, many things that I still think about to this day. So I was doing that, but as I said, I'm at Ohio State, which is a huge football school, huge basketball school, and the Lantern is Ohio State's student newspaper. And it was interesting because someone came, our teacher was basically like, all right, you guys can pick what you want to do. And I realized there wasn't really like much room for investigative reporting in the student newspaper. It was more of like, oh, this new bar's opening, this is closing, here are the events. sports seemed to be the most interesting. So I was like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do the sports writing, simply because I thought it would give me the most opportunity, and it did. I was good at it. I got a scholarship. So for a minute I thought, all right, I'm going to go on and continue with this. Meanwhile, the recession happened. So this was like my junior year, 2008, 2009. And people were coming in. I think Maggie Barr, when she talked to you, kind of told a similar story. Like, people are coming in telling you all the negative things about journalism. Like, nobody had anything positive to say. It's like, you're not going to make any money. You're probably still going to have to be a server. Don't expect to get a big break right away. You're going to have to be like in a grueling situation. And I was just like, okay, maybe I need a plan B. So on a whim, I decided to take the GRE and go, apply for some grad schools. Not really sure what would come of it. I ended up getting offered an assistantship at Kent State to get my master's degree for free. And I was, 21, and I'm thinking, well, if I don't do this now, I don't know if I'm ever going to get this degree. And I think it's really cool to have a master's degree. So I'm going to go to Kent. So a lot of gut feelings are happening, in your early 20s, you're just like flying on the seat of your pants. So instead of doing the journalism route, I did PR. I wanted to get some experience on the other side of the coin. I had worked with the sports relations people, and I thought their jobs were interesting. I just wanted to get well-rounded with it. So while I was at Kent State, fast forward, one of my PR management classes, we had someone from Rosetta, so when it used to be Rosetta, the creative director, came in to speak to our class about just creative agency life, and I thought it sounded interesting, so I connected with him on LinkedIn, and then I ended up talking to him, and he was like, we are offering an internship for a copywriter. I think you'd be a good fit. So I came in and interviewed, and I interned at Rosetta in the summer of 2011. Toward the end of that, I was offered full-time to come back after graduation. And at that point, it was like, this is a much safer and economical job decision for me than like trying to go, the journalism route at this point. And I would still be doing writing, copywriting. So I had the whole year of grad school set. I'm like, I've got a job lined up. This is awesome. I went to be a graduate assistant on a study abroad trip in London, and just got all these cool opportunities because I didn't really feel like I had to worry about it. And I come to find out that, oh, by the way, you won't be able to start until end of August in the creative department. And I was like, that was not shared with me. I signed a lease on an apartment. I am in London, like spending money, like thinking I'm going to be starting work as soon as I get back. And what ended up happening was someone in the SEO team, on the content team, had put in their 2 weeks, like a day after we had this conversation with HR. And she was like, do you want to take that? You can start June 4th. And I was like, if it means I can start June 4th, yes.
There you go.
That is my long-winded roundabout way of how I got into SEO. It was SEO content writing. I knew a little bit about SEO. Dominic Litton, who we both worked with and is now over at Budget Dumpster, actually was another speaker in one of my classes and did a whole SEO spiel. So I learned a little bit from him and connected there. And I thought it was interesting. So it wasn't like I was going into it totally blind. But I mean, going from a 10-year-old thinking you're going to be like, investigating all these major crimes and cracking down on things to SEO content writing. Moral of the story is your path can lead you anywhere. So don't be afraid to follow your gut and logic and mix that together.
So tell me, so from your start to where you are now, Rosetta, to now, same company, but merged into Publicis Sapient. How has your role in what you're doing evolved since the beginning?
Exponentially it's evolved. So I started as a associate SEO content writer. So My client was a major hospitality client. I had 2 different projects that I was doing with them, and it was simply writing and optimizing press releases, which in 2012, used to still be a pretty big tactic from an offsite perspective to drive links. Not to say that you still can't use PR to your link advantage. It's just, writing a press release about a new meeting space opening probably isn't the best approach anymore, but that was one of the tactics we were doing. And then optimizing on-page content for that same hospitality client, so title tags, meta descriptions, on-page copy. So it was really just like churn and burn, like getting through all of this content. So I was doing that for around 6 months, and finally, I was to the point where I wasn't having a lot of revisions on my work, and it was just kind of the same thing. And I said, I want to do more than just content. Like, I'd like to be strategizing around this. So got the opportunity to start being more of a hybrid strategy content person. Strategy at that time just being, influencing the keyword strategy and sort of the placement and, how we were going to promote some of these pieces. So evolved into that. I really did continue to stay on the more of the content strategy side. I think with my journalism background and having a master's degree, I do have a little bit more of a well-rounded understanding of, a site and how it fits in your holistic marketing plan. So I try to look at things from a big picture. Also during this time, I was learning more technical because that was something I never had exposure to for at least my first couple years. So getting more involved in that. And then, so basically I started from an associate. Now I'm a supervisor. I'm leading a team of 4 on one of my clients, and then a couple other team members just as a career manager. So, I've been at the same place. It's kind of crazy, like in agency terms, to be at the same place, and technically almost 8 years if you count my internship. But I've learned a lot. Like, it's a big agency, as you know. Like, Rosetta was big when it was Rosetta, but now that it's Publicis Sapient, like, I'm dealing with people in different, time zones. I'm dealing with people in different countries, and it's all good. It's all good learning experience. You kind of have to learn on the fly. So, I've really learned a lot and grown, and I think having good clients has helped, and working with good people has helped.
So Maggie came in from a journalism background, and you come in from a journalism and investigative crime reporter background. Not necessarily the crime reporting side, but how do you feel like journalism and that investigative background has helped you? And I only ask this because I feel like I see SEOs now. Granted, I've got almost 2 in a row with you and Maggie that come from a very similar background, but I feel like SEOs come from so many different walks of life, and that's what this podcast is about and what I find most fascinating. How do you feel like that experience has helped you?
Because I really take the time to do my homework. And I don't look at it as just a siloed approach. I try to look at things just from, okay, let's just give this basic example of you're optimizing one page. And that's all fine and good to find some keywords and diddle daddle and write a few sentences on there. But that one page is part of a larger ecosystem. You really need to know what's going on in that larger ecosystem. So one of the things that I do, and I always tell new team members to do whenever you get on a new client or a new project, don't even go into the SEO stuff first. Learn about the client, figure out their brand, Google them, look at their Wikipedia, understand what do they do, what do they offer. If they're an enterprise client, how many brands do they have that fall under them? What are the differentiators? I mean, you can look at any website, and if you're in this business long enough and figure out the gist and the look and feel of a site and what they're trying to convey to their audience. Look at their social profiles, see how bold they are with their content on social. That gives a pretty good idea of how bold they're willing to be in other avenues. So really just taking a minute to just understand what you're up against, because I think sometimes where people get themselves in trouble is they'll jump on projects and then they have no idea what the client business is, and they're just trying to apply a strategy. And while at its core, SEO is what it is, there's ranking factors and those aren't going to change. Well, I shouldn't say those aren't going to change, but like for client A and client B, they're going to be very similar. But you don't know the business, and you get questions and pushback of things that could probably be avoided had you just done your homework on who they are themselves. So I think having that like knowledge and doing that, from a very, very early on in my collegiate career, has helped me with that. It's just an innate instinct to me. It's not something I have to think about.
So let me talk about the content stuff for a second, not content strategy, but the content writing. So one of the things I remember running up against, and I've talked with a few people about this, is the idea that writers and strategists have or had separate career paths. And I know that for some people ended up being very challenging to get kind of on the strategist career path, because there was, and I'm betting it wasn't just with our agency, but other agencies as well, that a writer could never turn into, and granted, some people just love writing, but that a writer could never turn into anything more, or at least they were limited from a career path standpoint. And almost, I felt like there were many people that if they didn't just straight up leave, they almost had to start over. Within kind of the company, and from a career perspective, moving into a new role. So like, how did that go for you? And how did you feel during that time?
So 2 main points about that. The first being, writing is interesting because being a writer is a skill you develop over time. It's kind of like if you're a coder. I couldn't go in and just code a page like in some crazy language. Like there's no way. It would take a lot of learning, and I'm not going to try to make that my skill set. I'll know what I need to do my job for SEO and where things need to fit. With writing, it's very similar. You can't teach someone to be a good writer at this stage in the game. Like you can teach them the basics to like get something done, but to write a long form article, that is a very specific skill. However, it's a lot easier to teach someone, in my personal opinion, and maybe I'm biased because I was taught, but it's a lot easier to teach someone who has a solid writing skill how to strategize and do other things than it is to teach someone who comes in as a strategist or a tech person how to write.
Oh yeah.
You got to start writing at an early age. I mean, I was doing Power of the Pen in 8th grade, going to state writing competitions, like journalism, getting scholarships, like that was something that I developed from very early on. But learning strategy, I'm not saying it was easy because there's so many nuances to it, and especially the tech piece, not easy, but it's a little bit, there's ways to be taught how to do it to be able to get your job done. So that's how I felt with that. As far as the career path piece, I've gotten very lucky, I will say. I don't, half of this job for me has been part luck of, hey, here's who you're going to work with. And just part, like, I know that, people aren't going to hand you anything. You're not going to just be given opportunities. You have to ask for them. And that's like it here at Publicis Sapient. That's anywhere you're going to go. So I've had really great clients that are willing to sort of, we know from agency, like implementation overall can be challenging, but the thinking at least has been there, and like the hope of trying to implement things has been there. So being able to at least try new things in that aspect has always been around. And then just having really good teammates. If you ask something, the worst someone can say is, no, that's not an opportunity right now. But you just keep asking. And I just kept asking and, kept trying new things and getting my foot in the door where it seemed like a logical fit.
You are an optimistic person. That's definitely something I can say about you, because I remember being there, and I remember other people not necessarily feeling the same way. And I think you've done a great job of exactly what you said, but also kind of persevering through tough times in some cases, and tough circumstances in other cases. And I mean, now look at where you've come. It's quite amazing. And the funny thing that you mentioned is the way that you've thought about it in terms of being easier to teach a writer to be a strategist than a strategist to be a writer. Honestly, the thinking internally was the exact opposite. And I tend to agree with you. I think if you're a writer, it's a very natural talent. It's probably akin to like somebody being good at hitting a baseball or hitting a golf ball, right? You either got it or you don't. And you can practice, but in the end, you either have it or you don't. Not something that's that easy to teach. But the thinking internally was that, hey, these writers, how they can never be strategists. They can't be abstract thinkers. They're just workhorse writers. And yeah.
Well, I think too, back then, the way we were operating, there were a lot of siloed people. I mean, we had that whole department that was doing link outreach, and that's what we were doing for 40 hours a week. And it was like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to not do this?
Which is insane. It was a machine.
We would never sell that in now. I mean, that's just not,
oh my Lord.
That's just not a way of doing things. The industry's evolved so much. So I think with that, we had so many people, and it was also easy to say, okay, you're going to be my strategist, and you're going to be my link people, and you're going to be my content people when you're starting out. And another point of that is we had a really strong college pipeline at the time. We were hiring people right out of school, and I mean, gosh, we would probably hire like 20, 30 people, students, every summer that would come in full-time or interns. And I almost felt like, I mean, similar to my situation, you were just put where the opportunity was. I mean, not too many people that have come in as a college hire have said like, oh, I'm going to do paid search, or I'm going to do SEO. It's just kind of like, here's where the hours are, and you're there. And then that's where you go with it. So that's part of, it was a blessing and a curse. A blessing because we always had really smart students that we were getting in. I mean, some of those people have gone on to be great friends of mine, that have come in. There's a lot of us that started in from the college track.
Yeah, a lot of superstars.
And I think that content writing piece, if you were a writer, you were lumped into that. And then, like you said, there was just a hierarchy of the way things were done. Now, because our SEO team, there are 30 to 40 of us in flux, because there's some folks we're adding on to the team. So I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot more to go around. So that's kind of one of the positives that's happened of all these mergers and things like that is, there's a little bit more to get exposure with. And we don't really have to silo one person. Like, I don't have to hire someone as an associate and say like, okay, all you're going to be doing is metadata optimization. All you're going to be doing is link building. Like, it's more, oh, you want to learn a tech audit and you've been here 2 months? Guess what? You're going to do a tech audit. Which, by the way, we're still using your wonderful template. That is
That's
in practice.
Funny, man. That thing lives on.
It's evolved. I mean, I've made some updates to it just based on recent, algorithm changes and things like that, but the core of it's still there.
That's funny, man. That thing has been alive for years and years and years. So for those of you that don't know, so when I first started, and this is 7 or 8 years ago, there was a tech audit template that had floated around the company, and then we all used it. And honestly, I shouldn't say we all. It got exposure to the technical SEOs, but not necessarily everybody else. So everybody didn't know how to use it, and eventually some of those folks left, and the folks that were left behind decided, hey, we're going to take that, and we like it, but we're going to adapt it, and then we're going to teach people how to use it. That's the most important. So that particular thing has been carried with me to other places in terms of that methodology and so on and so forth. And other people are still kind of using that methodology and adapting it for themselves. But man, it is.
We should patent it.
Right. I wish.
But it's like, it should be a patent where it's written that it's not specific to the agency where it was created. It's like the people who have used it. You may not
Right. And it has changed. I've changed it on my side many times to kind of fit my own needs, but man, it lives on. It's pretty awesome. And it's still pretty representative of all the kind of core stuff that needs to be taken into consideration. And that's something I was going to ask you as a person who started on the content side. How easy for you was it to go over? Because I feel like to be a well-rounded SEO. Here, let me back up. What I feel like for SEOs is that you should be able to hold your water because there are so many different things that you need to talk about. You have to be able to, at minimum, hold your water with all of them, whether it's content, tech, offsite, international, right? There's any number of the things that you have to be able to speak to. But I always tell everybody, like, find something that you're passionate about within SEO.
Yeah.
Any job really, and really get good at that so you can differentiate yourself. And you've, I think, differentiated yourself on the content strategy side. I tend to get bucketed as a technical SEO, although I actually love content and content strategy. So I'm kind of breaking out of that myself. How hard was it to go from having no exposure to tech to learning it and now being able to drive strategy if you need to from a technical standpoint?
Well, I think you running the trainings that you did was super helpful. I know there were a lot of them for all of us, but you really broke it down nicely. Like, I still have those notes and can easily refer to that.
That's awesome.
If I needed. I think the first tech audit I did, it was myself and Annie Serson. We were doing one, and we're like, okay, we're going to do this in a room together because there's no way we're going to be able to do this on our own. So we did sit in a room together, and if there were sessions that she had missed that I was there and vice versa, we could bounce things off each other. And we really just kept a format and worked on it section by section, and then sent it for feedback. And we actually didn't get as much as we thought because we had really put our heads together. So making it collaborative and working with another person was super important. And then just, practicing, like, it's one thing to say, like, this is a robots file and you should do this with it, but it's another thing to really explain what that is. So I think just practicing, I know there's only so many hours in the day, but when it's something you're not comfortable with, like I wasn't as comfortable with that, I would practice. I would do notes. I would, really talk through, like, if I had to explain this to, like, my aunt who's 80 years old, like, what is this, trying to break it down. That's helped a lot. And by no means is tech like my, passion, but I can run through a tech audit to a client now with no problem. Because of that. There's still things where I'm like, ooh, I need to check on that. I'll get back to you on how we really implement it depending on the size of the site. But for the most part, I can do it pretty cohesively and, share findings, and I don't have to think as hard.
And it's funny. I feel like I still learn new things every day. And I just had a conversation with one of our other former colleagues last night, and we talked about how it's some people really get like frazzled if they don't know everything, or they expect that their immediate superior is going to always know the answer, and sometimes that's just not the case. And I think for everybody listening, it is absolutely okay to not know everything. It's almost impossible, especially if you have a life outside of work. It's almost impossible. And even if you don't have a life and all you do is live and breathe SEO, it's still almost impossible to know everything. So, like, don't take it personal if you don't know everything. And don't be afraid to Google things, right? There's lots of good. That's the one great thing about this industry is there's so many people who are so willing to share that you don't know the answer. Chances are somebody else can help get you there.
For sure.
Yeah. So
knowing how to Google answers is a fundamental part of SEO. So
right. So let's talk about because I want to get into your biggest successes and even probably more interestingly, your biggest failures.
Biggest successes I'd say recently. So as you know, being in an agency, like it's really hard to implement things,
Mhm.
just in general. So it's hard to have like all these, amazing $1 million case studies, but, I'm on a CPG, so consumer packaged goods client, right now. They are overall, I can't say who they are, but they're smaller than a Procter and Gamble, but some of their brands are very well known. So if you saw them in market, you would know who they are, but you wouldn't really know, oh, that's part of this odd sounding client.
Mhm.
They're a great client, and I've had successes there because the brand teams just don't really know much about SEO, and so like even the little things make a difference.
Mhm.
We launched some metadata, just metadata, titles and meta descriptions, no on page, just cleaning that up. We saw a 36% lift in average rank in like 3 weeks with that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's a huge, and that's like a really basic fundamental SEO tactic.
Mhm.
So I know it's not this big mind-blowing thing, but that's a success to me because it's a way to get your foot in the door, to have some sort of quantifiable data to show a client like, hey, this is just scratching the surface, and then add in more work that way. So that was a big win, from a fundamental standpoint. From a more advanced standpoint, so I am owning a lot of voice search, research and
Yeah.
strategy. So I'm doing a lot with Google Home and testing on Alexa. I created this, my goal is eventually this will be built where we can, have something a little more automated to do the testing. But right now it's just me talking to these robots and saying, how do you do this? Where is this? What is this product? So that's been interesting. And there's a few others of us at Publicis Sapient that are also super involved in this as well. So I'm not taking sole credit. But that's really evolved because clients are getting really more and more interested in that. And I think just being able to coherently explain it to a client quickly, like I can be brought in and talk about it, is cool to me because, it's something very new. And I don't know that I've always gotten the opportunities to like be on the cusp of this new technology and sort of be like a thought leader in our space. So that's more of a personal success. Failures and regrets.
Hmm.
There's one regret that I think you probably know what it is because
Oh,
it's
we share the same one.
it's
If
a
you don't
very
tell it, I'm
unfortunate
going to.
it's a very unfortunate email that accidentally went to a client, and
Mhm.
Jake and I were like, well, do we pack up now or do
Yeah.
we wait out the weekend? Everything ended up being fine, but that's the lesson in, watch what you say in email, even if you're just joking and it's, we all joke and gripe and yada yada, but yeah, uh,
Do you mind if I tell the story?
you can tell the story.
Won't tell the client. Essentially what had happened is we were working with a client for a long time, and they were great, but they had some idiosyncrasies, and there were some challenges that we joked about that sometimes irked us, rubbed us the wrong way. And this is all completely normal. It's just humans dealing with other humans. And I would say in agency world, it's not uncommon to band together and have these types of, I'm just going to say, unflattering, not great conversations on the side.
It's venting, it's just common
Venting.
venting.
That's a great way to put it. On the side, and we made the mistake of venting through email. And me personally, I did this. I remember doing it, and I wish I could take it back. Responded to the client, forgot to remove the venting from the email, and the client saw it. And I thought that and this was back and forth conversation between you and I, which was never supposed to be seen by anybody but us.
And let me preface, it wasn't even really that bad.
Well, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like we said,
just like not the most professional.
It wasn't like we said, F you, we hate you, client, or you're such a giant whatever. And it wasn't bad in the grand scheme of things, but man, it did not look good, and it didn't come at a great time. And honestly, I've never felt more bad in my professional career than I did at that moment. And I knew it. I knew it within 3 seconds of hitting send, like, oh crap. And there are times when I have like these panic moments with respect to emails these days, to go back and make sure that if there's anything in there that is not flattering. Sometimes I rewrite emails 3 times almost obsessively. I go back and just double check. And I honestly, now I don't even commit anything unflattering, even over Slack or anything like that. Anything that's not going to be something that I would say in person, I just keep it in my head.
Yeah,
Keep it in my head.
I'll stare at an email for like 20 minutes. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
who's on this? Everything's good, and it's the same.
And my first question to our boss was, am I going to be fired? And I would have deserved it. But yeah, no. So we share that failure together. Are there any other failures that you don't share with me?
That's my favorite, but not favorite one.
That was not good.
One funny regret. So everybody has their. This has been really the only agency I've worked. Well, I guess I can't say really the only agency, because the agency's had 5 different names since I started. Mm-hmm. So it's I've been at 4 different places. But my first week, and mind you, I was supposed to be a copywriter. I wasn't supposed to be in SEO content. And my very first week, the client was on site. I had no idea really still what I was doing. I was just ramping up. And they're like, oh yeah, we have the client, we're meeting them. And we were everyone was introducing themselves. Everyone had basically been on this client for a year minimum at this point, except me. I was a week in, still didn't know what my place in the world was. And they were like, oh, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I was like, I'm Margie Stahl. This is my first week. And I'm like, I really like to write, so I'm really excited. And that was all I said. And it was nothing relating to anything SEO related. And someone's like, yeah, so she's going to be doing our, the press releases, and we'll be handling that. And after it, I'm like, I sounded like such an idiot. I think of that every once in a while, because I try to be mindful when other new college hires are in. They're going to say some things that you're just like, oh, sweetie,
yeah.
You'll learn. But it makes me a little more tolerable of that, because I've been in their shoes.
Yeah, you were there.
There's things that first year where you're like, yeah, why did I do that? What was I thinking? Why did I say that? Why did I don't know. It's very humbling. So, yeah.
So before we move into the next section, I always like to allow people some time to speak about the people that have helped them grow and have helped mentor them. And obviously we've had the relationship, so don't say me. Who has helped you from a mentorship standpoint grow within your career? Doesn't even necessarily have to be SEO specific. Who has helped you?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Dean
Love
was
Brian.
a mentor of mine who you now get the pleasure of working with. I'm jealous.
Not the SEO Brian Dean. It's our right. Brian Dean. Different.
Yeah, very different people.
Yes.
Very different. Just Google both of them and you'll see
yes.
immediately that they're different. Brian was our boss on the shared client we had, yes. And I think not as much necessarily the SEO skill he taught me, but the how to have the attitude of it's only marketing. We're not saving lives. There aren't people on an operating table that are going to die if we mess something up. It's the internet. We're making money for large corporations. Everything is okay. Put your personal life first. That was one piece. The just how to have fun at work and not take yourself too seriously portion. And that also translated in how well he deals with clients. I think he just makes clients feel very comfortable. Mm-hmm. He tries to have a personal relationship, and I think that's part of it. I mean, in an agency, we're essentially client services, customer service people. If you really think about it, even if we're not dealing with clients on a day-to-day, we have to in some capacity, especially, at the level we're at now. And I think just being able to be more personable and not, being professional, but not having to be so buttoned up where it's your personality has to suffer. Another one, Matt Saunders, was probably
Yes.
someone that was like instrumental in kind of getting me past that just like content and basic keyword research person to leading more strategy and like helping me get there. And you know, as I mentioned before, like I always do think about the big picture, and I always have, but I think he took it a step further with like how to look into the data from a big picture and really use data to understand how to do our job versus just going off of gut feeling and, you know, whatever's on search engine land that day. So he's another one. I mean, there's, you know, I mean, there's so many people in this
Yeah.
industry just like talk, but it's like, do you ever actually do this stuff? Like, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, so those two, I mean, you were instrumental in like me learning the technical side and bridging that gap and, you know, getting that more well-roundedness. So yeah. And then, you know, I'm working with some great people now. My career manager now, Sean Stallman, is great.
Yep.
He's another one that's like really people first, you know, really tries to put the best interests of everybody at hand. You know, Steve Pitts, even before he had left a year ago or so, you know, he was definitely had to evolve into that and, you know, really cared about the team. So to me, it's like, it's one thing to learn how to do the job. It's another thing to just show that you actually give a crap about your team members. And I think it shows, you know, when you're trying to make time, and, you know, you're not always going to be the perfect person. You're not going to make everybody happy. But I think, you know, those people really taught me just how to have an open mind, an open ear, and just like really think through things.
Yeah. And I agree. I like all of those names, have great respect for all of them. And what I'll say about, first about Brian is so awesome that I followed him to another job here at Search Discovery. Search Discovery, if it's good enough for Brian, it's good enough for me. But yeah, no, Brian was really good at bringing levity to the situation. And I like to talk about mental health in this industry, because sometimes mental health can suffer because it's, you know, sometimes you work a lot of hours, sometimes it can get really stressful, and he always brings the levity. And he's the I feel like it's like a Brian phrase. It's like, we're not curing cancer, right? We're just doing marketing. And when you can put it in that perspective, it has a way of making you feel like, all right, the current challenges aside, things are going to be okay. And he's really great with clients, and really, honestly, when I feel like when I'm on site with Brian there, no matter how intense the conversation could be, he always brings this calming sense to it. And part of that is the fact that he's sitting in whatever the meeting is, cracking jokes or cracking on himself or whatever the entire time. So that makes it lighthearted. But then every once in a while, he'll let how smart he is come out from under the jokes. And he really just has a great way of, and it's almost like a gut feel sort of thing. And I give people that are in kind of the client services end of things a lot of credit, because like, it's one thing for us as subject matter experts to sit on our side of the fence and make recommendations. But dealing with a client is almost an art form, right?
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out, and honestly, that's, the recommendations are the recommendations, but figuring out how you can work with the client to get them implemented. It's psychology at its best, right? And Brian's really good at that. And then the other three, I feel like there are so many, and not to say that these guys aren't well known, but they're not well known when you compare them to conference circuit SEOs, right? The people that are on the speaking circuit. And it's not that they've never spoken or anything like that, but there are so many SEOs out there that people will never know or that won't know, that are just so great. And I would put those three right at the top of my list in terms of just being really good at their job, and really instrumental in my own personal growth as well. So I have a ton of respect for all three. So
yeah, definitely.
So let's move into segment number 2. We're done with the long segment. Segment number 2. So you got to make your bones. Drop a knowledge bomb, not a literal one, but a figurative knowledge bomb. Tell me something I didn't.
So what's your level of expertise with voice and how it's trending as far as it pertains to SEO?
Honestly, I would say novice. I feel like given that the rise of voice search is very current, I don't feel like I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination. So drop some voice search knowledge on me.
And really no one is, because it keeps evolving. Like you said, it's so new. I mean, you have voice technology from your, my TV is a Fire Stick powered. So it's like, Alexa, do this. I still don't even do a ton with it. You've got smart homes with refrigerators and washers and Roombas that can talk to each other. But the biggest thing for SEO, so I think one thing that I always get asked is about Alexa and Google Home. Alexa is a really hot one because Echoes and Alexa devices are the most adopted technology that people have in terms of market share in the home. However, not the best tool when you want to connect an SEO strategy to it. Alexa is Amazon owned. It's powered by Bing in some fashion, but it's really good for like if you do want to have a smart home. I mean, they opened up, this was pretty recent when they opened up to basically third party. So, Alexa technologies are compatible with virtually any voice driven appliance, smart home device, speaker, what have you out there. So they're really good for getting your home to do things. They're really good for like the fun things, you have kids. So if you have an Alexa and it's like, play this song or tell me a joke, it has a lot of that. She knows a lot of that language, and then tying it to your Amazon account. If you think of it from an SEO perspective, if you ask Alexa, how do I get this stain out of my carpet? She's not going to know. She's like, I'm sorry, I don't know that. Or if a brand like Tide, for example, has built an Alexa skill, which a skill is something you can deploy in Alexa. It takes, time and effort. You have to have someone develop this to answer some of those queries. You have to feed it the language and what you want it to answer based on questions yourself. In that sense, you can get those answers maybe. With Google Home, it is tied almost exclusively to your quick answers presence. So from an SEO standpoint, when someone wants to do voice search and they say, well, Alexa, I steer them back to Google Home because of that. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck if you're thinking about it from an SEO tactic. So if you ask, how do I get a stain out of my carpet, whatever that quick answer is, not necessarily one-to-one, because as we know, the SERP changes based on the query, based on the location. But I think when we did our recent testing, it was around 80 to 90% of the queries that it returned matched what the quick answer was.
So let me ask you this.
Quick answer.
So quick answers, they're not always answers or based on questions, right? So does it do the same? Does it respond in the same way when I feel like answer boxes show for some searches where there isn't a question, it's just a query? Does it show the same way there, or is it less?
Oh yeah, pretty similar. It's pretty spot on. It's it's not 100% accurate, but it will basically read whatever that says. If it's just a list, it'll start reading off the list. The one interesting thing is, so how you have the voice enabled if you have a Google app, if you ask that a question and a paid result appears before the answer box, it'll just say, here's what I found. It does. Siri is, in my opinion.
Can you restate that answer? Sorry, this happened with Joanna last night. We had some internet issues, and I can see your internet's going like red and yellow. I can edit it out.
Okay. So yeah, when you have the quick answer box, if you think about it on mobile, and if you ask your Google Assistant on your phone this query, whatever that may be, and there is a paid result that appears before that quick answer or a shopping result, it won't actually read you a voice result. It will just say, here's what I found, which is similar to what Siri does. If you ask Siri voice search, Siri's almost silly to me sometimes for like getting an answer. It's like you're supposed to be hands-free and you're not actually telling me an answer. You're just giving me internet results, which is funny. But if you ask the same thing to a Google Assistant, like your actual Google Home, then it will read you the quick answer because it's not bound by any paid listings or anything like that. So it's just telling you. The other thing that's really crucial in voice for SEO is your site has to be secure. It's even for like,
really?
And in any of the research that we've done, we have not seen any non-secure sites appearing in a quick answer box and thus returning a voice result. So it's just another way you get a little bit of a ranking boost by having that secure site. So throwing that out there. So that's the big thing. I mean, I know that was a little bit long-winded, but
no, that's awesome. That's great advice.
Educating on the difference between Alexa and Google Home, I think there's a knack to want to go toward Alexa, and that's great. But if you want to think of it as an SEO, Google is your better bet. Just like with anything right now. That said, like Alexa-enabled technology and Amazon is super valuable. And if your brand has a big Amazon presence, like definitely figure out how to use that to your advantage, because you can really, monetize that in a way.
Yeah, I was on last night. Honestly, we were talking a lot about Amazon SEO, and it's interesting how when people think of SEO, they think Google, but SEO and optimizing for things is starting to branch outside of Google into like these big, massive players like your Amazons or your Walmarts or what are these big marketplaces. And honestly, there are now people whose entire career is just optimizing for Amazon specifically, which I find fascinating, just completely fascinating that somebody can have a job. I find it fascinating that I can have a job, but then to see how that's spawning into these brands that have gotten so big that somebody can have a job just focusing on optimizing their site. So they're like Google, except you can buy, and even Google, you can buy things, but they're just like Google, almost like a competitor. So it's amazing.
And people search, I mean, there's a little bit of a different nuance in how people search, but people are using these things as search engines. I mean, Pinterest is another one. Like, it's a social platform, but like for specific things like fashion and food, like that's a search engine. People are going on there to search for recipes or bypassing Google to do that, to search for styles and things like that. So, I always try to look at that too. And especially working with CPG clients that aren't selling their product on their site, they are selling on Amazon. It's like, we want you to rank well, and your sites are an awareness and education tool. Your conversions are going to come from those e-commerce sites. So let's figure out how to optimize that too.
Absolutely. So what tools are you using these days? What's in your tool belt?
Still use Bright Edge. So work with them pretty closely. They're a great one in terms of the level of data that's in their keyword set. With their data cube tool, I still get a lot of value of that. I would say too, like, there's Conductor, there's Search Metrics. All three of those are probably the big enterprise level players. They all essentially do the same thing. I've just had a relationship with Bright Edge, and it's worked well for what we're accomplishing. So I'm still using that. As far as other tools, I am really growing to love Ahrefs. I use that for keyword research now. Yeah, I mean, their keyword research now that you can't trust the Google Keyword Planner anymore, it's been like that for a while, of course, but I like that you get some search volume data within Ahrefs, and you can do more of a mass keyword research, because with like the data cube tool, you can really only test in a few things. You can test URLs, but you can't like dump in a whole list and see what it outputs. So Ahrefs has been excellent for that. And being able to tie that into, I think it's neat, and it's not that expensive, with like traffic estimates and backlinks has been nice. So those are probably my two faves at the moment.
Yeah, no, I can't remember if I've told this story or not. So when we were at, when I was at Publicis Sapient, Rosetta, whatever, there was a certain, there was the relationship with bright edge. And at the time, seems like it's changed. There was not a lot of ability to go outside of that, no matter how much we might have wanted to utilize other or even test other enterprise level tools. But when I left the company and I went to startups.co, I finally got my opportunity to kind of dive fully into other tools, and Ahrefs was the one that I really wanted to try out the most. And I haven't been disappointed. I've turned into a giant fanboy, but when I really turned into a fanboy was way back 4 or 5 years ago. I had written this article on my site about SEO tools and which tools that I liked the best. And at that time, Ahrefs, I think, was just starting to ascend. And the last time I had used them, they were very similar to Majestic in that they just focused on links, and it wasn't much more beyond that. The interface wasn't much more beyond that. So like, honestly, that's what I said. And Tim Sulo, the head of marketing, reached out to me and said, I think you're going to find that Ahrefs is a little bit more than that. Here's a free 6-month membership. Go crazy.
Give it a go.
And I did. And when I got in there, I was like, oh my God, they've completely revamped everything. And the interesting thing is their progression within the industry they've gone from a link tool to a viable enterprise solution. And I'm reading Rand Fishkin, who was my first episode, because I got super lucky, reading his book Lost in Founder. And he actually talks about, because everybody, when they think of big players in SEO from a tooling standpoint, Moz also is one of the, especially 4 or 5 years ago, one of the first, if not the first tool that came to mind. And I find it fascinating that of all the people that I've interviewed thus far, like not one person, maybe I'll have to go back and listen, but I don't think that a person has mentioned Moz among their upper echelon tools. And Rand actually talks and specifically calls out Ahrefs in his book Lost in Founder among kind of the tools that had began to surpass them. And that isn't to beat on Moz or anything like that, but it's just interesting how they came out of nowhere. And then I have my fun personal anecdote with respect to Tim Sulo, and I don't know him personally, but reaching out to me and saying, yeah, you're an idiot, go try our tool. It's been updated, and I tried it, loved it, and updated my article. And yeah, no, it's I love the tool as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I like Moz too. I feel like that one's just like everyone uses. So
yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad
for various things, but yeah.
Like Moz Local a lot. So somebody getting into the industry, I feel like you've given a little bit of advice, but if you had to like take them aside and give them one piece of advice, they're new to SEO, what would you say?
I would say there's probably 2 that kind of go together. One, be a sponge. There's a lot of information. So there's 200 some ranking factors. You're not expected to memorize that overnight. So that's okay. Be a sponge and just be able to connect the dots. So that's one piece. The other piece is just be humble and try to be easy to work with instead of a know-it-all. I don't care if you're fresh out of college or you've been around the block for 20 years. I've found that the people I've enjoyed working with the most are the people that are the ones that are easy to get along with. We all have very different personalities, every single person I work with, and different interests outside of work. And, it's like sometimes I'll think, man, like, would I be friends with any of my coworkers in high school? Like, would they like me? Like, what would we have done? It's just like funny to think about that.
Right.
But I think they've just been easy to work with, and being able to be approachable. And, if you're new to SEO, don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't feel like you need to know everything. As we mentioned before, you don't have to come in acting like you're the big man on campus or woman. It's just not going to work. And that entitled elitist attitude is not going to get you far. You might think it will, but it's really not. So, be a good coworker, be a good teammate.
Make your teammates' jobs easier.
Exactly.
Yeah. Make them like you. All right, so time to get made into the Page Two podcast family. So, what is a personal fact about you that most people don't know?
I have a few I could have went with, but I think I'm going to go with this one. So I actually have a half sibling that is out
Okay,
there in the world that I have never met. Um,
really?
so I've been told by family members that it's a she, but then others say no, it was a boy. My mother gave this person up for adoption
Mm.
when they were born. So yeah, 6 years older than me. So there's someone out there. So, in the back of my mind, I always think, oh, should I have like my Oprah moment and find this person? So maybe someday, especially now that you can get a DNA test on the internet for like $50. So that's one. The other one is that in college on my half birthday, I sang with Vanilla Ice at a bar at
Really?
Ohio State. Yeah,
Did you
not
sing Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go? And
no,
Turtles
I think it
too?
was like Ice Ice Baby, like
Okay.
his basic. He was there for some appearance. I look back on that and just laugh. I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, why did I do these things?
Maybe you can go help
But
in
yeah,
flip
that's another
houses
one.
now.
So that's my like big profound one is the sibling, and then my funny one is Vanilla Ice.
Cool. So you're familiar with The Office, right?
Yes,
Of
of
course,
course.
of course. So the episode where Ryan starts the fire, they play a game called Desert Island Movies, where you can get 5 movies. You're stranded on a desert island. You get 5 movies, I'll let you do shows to watch for the rest of your life. What are your 5?
Parks and Rec is not a movie. It's a TV show that spawned after The Office. First season is bad. It's 6 episodes. Power through it. The rest of it, if you've never watched, is the funniest show. Like I really like The Office. Parks and Rec is probably above The Office for me. They're
Do you
probably
have a
1 and 2.
specific episode?
Specific episodes. So I have like my top 5. Number 1 is probably it's called The Fight. So there's this club entertainment, or no, it's the Snake Juice Lounge or Snake Hole Lounge. That's this one. Snake Hole Lounge is there, and Tom Haverford, who Aziz Ansari plays, on his side hustles. He's always doing a side hustle, and one of them is like promoting these things. And so he's promoting this new liquor that's come out called Snake Juice, and it basically tastes amazing, but gets you completely blacked out. So Leslie and Anne are in this huge fight, just a typical friend fight. They're working through their issues. Meanwhile, all the other characters are drinking snake juice, including Ron Swanson, and just getting obliterated. So much is happening, and like there's a scene where it's like just a montage of each character like coming in, and you're seeing how drunk they are. And I mean, I cry tears every time I see that one. I have a friend from grad school, like on his birthday, I took a bottle of Jack Daniels and like took the label off and wrote snake juice on it and like was like, here you go. So yeah, that one stands out. There's a few others that are amazing, but I could watch it repeat. So that is the show, all seasons of that. When I was in college, Katherine Heigl was making like 8 million movies, and so I've seen 27 Dresses and like The Ugly Truth 5 million times. And sadly, like even though I've evolved as a person, I still like those movies. So I could,
Butler.
yeah, they're easy to watch. They're easy to watch. So I could definitely have that on a desert island.
And then she was mean to everybody, and now she can't get a movie.
No, now she's in like cat litter commercials. It's crazy.
Yeah. Jeez, don't be mean to people.
Exactly. That goes back to my advice. Like, be easy to work with and be nice.
Or you're going to be in cat litter commercials for the rest of your life.
That's where you are. So those 2, let's see, 5. Oh man. If I had to grab a Disney movie in there, The Lion King. It's a big Lion King groupie at the age of 6, and very excited for the live action version.
The new one. Yeah.
Very pumped, great cast, love all the choices. So I will be watching that. So that would be my kids movie that's in there. And then final one.
Well, you got 2 more.
Oh, true.
Yeah, don't skip on the 5. You're on a desert island.
Yeah, so I guess more serious movie. Leo movies are always great. Inception is one. It just
Ooh,
gets
yeah.
your mind going. So I would add that into the arsenal. I like to have a well-rounded
Yeah,
experience.
you need it.
And then lastly, oh man, probably, I guess if I'm thinking just off the top of my head, Anchorman, Ron Burgundy.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of classic one-liners that I think, I can't believe that movie came out in 2004 for one. That's nuts to me.
It's like Elf.
Yeah,
Elf.
exactly. I didn't,
Yeah.
had no idea it was that old until this year, and I was like, oh my god, all these like holiday movies are so old. Yeah, that would be one. I mean, there's classic one-liners that everyone still quotes from that just exactly what someone's talking about when they say it.
That escalated quickly.
Milk was a bad choice.
You're going to be doing a lot of laughing. Okay, so what's on your music app right now? What do you listen to?
So we have a concentration flow that my boyfriend created. So I listen to that at work exclusively. Well, I shouldn't say exclusively. I listen to Spotify. So that I also find myself like diving back into like the hip hop songs from like the late 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes the early 2000s. And I think, oh my God, these were such jams. And that's funny because I feel old when I'm listening to like Post Malone and stuff that's out now, and I'm like, this stuff's crap. And I'm thinking, when I was listening to Ja Rule, I'm sure other people
you were so cool, but the people 10 years older than you were like, that's no Tupac or Biggie.
Yeah. So, I definitely go down that path. I think I read a study that like after age 26, your taste in music sort of stagnates. Like you like what you like and you don't really have interest in evolving. And I'm starting to feel like that's true. There are some new things that I like. I secretly like Ariana Grande. So
not so secret
Selena
anymore.
Gomez. Not so secret anymore. Bet cat's out of the bag. But I don't listen to them frequently. But when I do hear a song, I'm like, yeah, it's catchy.
All right.
So I don't know, that didn't directly answer it because I'm a little all over the place when I listen to music. I listen to a lot of podcasts too, like when I'm doing long drives, like back to Sandusky or anything. So
cool.
Have some balance.
So last one, and it's super morbid. You're going to the electric chair. What is your last meal?
So I would have lobster, like a big lobster as an appetizer, followed by my 3 favorite combinations at Barrio, which is a local taco place in Cleveland. There's one, so my house, I am in the Tremont neighborhood, and I am probably from the Barrio here. The buzzer from the restaurant works in our house. So if there's a wait, we can come home and hang and then go back over when our table's ready. So that would be my main course. And then I would have a combination of Toff's ice cream. It's a Sandusky local ice cream. It really skewed my perception of ice cream sizes. When I got to college at Ohio State, we had graders. At Toff's, if you order a small, it is the equivalent of like an extra large at Graders or Mitchell's or anything like that. So it really skewed my perception of ice cream sizes because I remember ordering a small at Graders and being like, is this all I get for $4? This is garbage.
Yep.
Specific flavor would be their yellow cake batter. It's like yellow cake batter and chocolate mixed together, and it's amazing. So that would be dessert.
Cool. So I can attest, Barrio, if you're ever in Cleveland, go there. It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So Margie, thank you for joining us. Where can and it's like 10:20 at night. So thank you for talking with me.
You're having fun. Good
right. No, we're having fun. Where can people find you?
So my handle is on Twitter is Margie324. My nickname and my birth date, because Margie Stahl was taken when I got my Twitter account in 2009. I know. Well, it was funny because back to the journalism thing as a side note, I remember someone coming to our class and saying, how many of you know what Twitter was? And no one knew what it was. And he was like, you all need to go home tonight and make a Twitter account because in 6 months, this is going to blow up and this is going to start to be where everyone gets their news. And sure enough, he was right. And
Yep.
that's another part of why the journalism thing kind of took a different course. So that's my Twitter handle. My Instagram is Margie Stahl, Margie Stahl, Stahl. So my name. I was more of an early adopter with Instagram, so I was able to get my name. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I have a dog blog too. I'm in the middle of revamping that. It's diaryofadogmom.com. I haven't really added any new content or redesigned it in quite some time, but that's a 2019 goal because my dog is getting a little older, so I want to start recapturing some of our stories.
So I've heard of mommy bloggers. I've never heard of doggy bloggers. So that's new to me.
They're out there. Doggy Instagrams are a hot thing. I have not gone down that path. But yeah, those are out there and really fun to follow.
Cool. Well, like I said before, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being willing to come on an early and not well-established podcast. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. Good to